Welcome to another episode of AFI's Cover 7 podcast. Today we are breaking down the state of the franchise of the Raiders Tirol. We have one of the oldest and proudest football teams in Europe coming into its second year in the European League of Football. Daniel, you've been following the Raiders all offseason. What do you think about sort of the new era of Raiders football heading into 2023?
I think that's overshadowing everything, isn't it? The new Raiders, right? I mean, Sean Shelton was a staple in that team for years. Took them to 5 national championships, I believe it was. Put up insane yardage. He was the face of Swaco, right, for such a long time, and now they've moved on from him. But last season was quite disappointing for them. I think they entered into Elf and kind of finished middle of the pack. They stumbled into the playoffs, beat down by Vienna, which is obviously not great because that's their rival. So I think they're going to want to bounce back this year, but I don't know if their off-season signings have made me believe that they will bounce back.
Yeah, obviously let's focus on the most predominant signing, Christian Strong. For those who don't know, Christian Strong has been on the scene for a while. He's had a strong career at Division II level in the States, and then went on to play in the German Football League the last few years. Yeah, and last year was probably his best year over here. Just looking at the numbers, threw for 37 touchdowns, almost 3,400 yards, and only 6 interceptions. However, we know he's a bit of a gunslinger from years before that, right?
Yeah, definitely. Watching him in GFO in Cologne, he was teamed up with 2 amazing receivers. Yeah, in the GFO in Cologne, he had a great season. He was teamed up with Marco Castle and Aaron Jackson. Played amazingly well. Like you said, Alex, a complete gunslinger. Threw a bunch of picks, but threw an insane amount of touchdowns and yards. And he's kind of carried that on. He is fearless in the pocket. He will throw any ball, no hesitations. And sometimes that bites him in the arse, and we'll see if that does bite him in the arse in Swaco because, this isn't the GFO anymore. This is a much tougher league. And I don't know if he has the same firepower that he did when he was in Cologne that first year.
Yeah, definitely. Sort of a Jameis Winston type of guy, maybe not to that extent, but likes to throw the ball around. And when you have guys like Markel Castle or Aaron Jackson, you may be tempted to throw that 50-50 ball. Now let's take a look at some of the receivers he does have in Tirol. So there's some strong candidates. He's bringing with him Jarvis McClam, the American receiver who played with him last year in Germany, who actually ended up being the leading scorer in the German Football League. So really interesting skill player there.
Yeah, so he's got a number of guys returning this year. Obviously missing Gank Meyer, has gone to Surge, but he's still got Philip Hahn, one of the best receivers, probably the best receiver in Austria, if not one of the best in Europe. Domestic guys, amazing route runner, great competitor, great athlete. Marco Schneider, again, extremely underrated, and then Platzgummer, who Sean Shelton ran a lot last year. They're great receivers, but I don't know if they play to Strong's game, right? He loved to throw anything plus 30 yards, he was going for it, right? He wasn't much of a kind of timing guy, whereas those receivers maybe they play better in that type of system, right? Where it's a bit more timing, it is a lot more. So we'll see if Strong can change his game slightly to adapt to his new receivers. But he's got some great receivers, but I think they're different to the ones he's had in the past as far as skill set goes.
Yeah, and to play devil's advocate, this will be the best team that Strong has played on in Europe easily. I mean, he'll have talent around him. One thing that they're doing to kind of protect their investment in Strong is beef up the offensive line. They're bringing in Toby Letman, a British lineman who played last year with Vienna. Really big guy, played NCAA football, older, strong guy who's probably one of the better interior linemen in the ELF. Along with Steven Nielsen, the Danish tackle, who was a big surprise and kind of a big signing for the league. He had spent the last 2 or 3 years playing in the Canadian Football League, where he even started some games. Before that, he was a Division I starter for Eastern Michigan. So definitely a really experienced offensive line, joining a pretty strong group already.
Yeah, definitely. And even on the other side of the ball, the Ogbeven brothers, Lucky and Precious, they've been playing in Austria for a while, for Vienna, in Stuttgart, sorry. So they've been around the Elf, been around different leagues. They are great athletes, great competitors, and for once they're on the same team, and that's a kind of that's a pretty troublesome duo for any offense to deal with.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch those two brothers playing together. You love to see that on any defense, especially. And I think that's where maybe they needed some help is at the linebacker position. You saw they had some strong defensive linemen, very experienced defensive backfield, and now they've kind of shored up the linebacker spot. Um, some other guys they're bringing back, Nicholas Gustav, another CFL guy, defensive end, played really well for them last year, was an ELF All-Star. And then some sort of Raiders legends with Tim Unger, Vincent Muller, Patrick Pilger. These guys were all on the AFL teams winning championships. Now they're trying to kind of bring in the new era of Raiders football in the ELF. But they're bringing in another. They still have some, imports coming into the defensive side. What can you tell us about the American imports they've brought in, Daniel? Yeah.
Yeah, so on defense, their single defensive import so far that I've seen is Jalen Embry. Played for 3 different colleges in college, but had a great final season at NIU. I think he led the team in pass breakups. I think historically he's led the team in pass breakups, like 3rd or 4th in the team in tackles. So he had a really solid college career at high level and played in the USFL very shortly afterwards. Yeah, had a brief stint in the USFL, but it didn't work out. So came to ELF, signed for the Frankfurt Galaxy, 44 tackles, 4 interception and 9 pass breakups. Solid performance from him, and now he's coming onto the Raiders, who had a shaky season last year in the back end. There were some games where they gave up a lot of yards through the air, despite having some pretty big names. So whatever wasn't working then, I'm sure they'll try to fix that. They've completely overhauled their secondary, and I'm sure he's going to be one of the key pieces of that secondary.
Do you see them using their leftover American spot maybe for another defensive back or going back to a defensive end last year?
I don't know the value of a defensive end import. I just don't think you get enough bang for your buck nowadays. I don't think you see, obviously, if you're playing in the GFL or something, you can use those dual import guys. They'll bring a D in, definitely. But if I've only got 2 imports on the team, American imports on the team, full stop, on the defense rather, sorry, then I'm going to put them in the secondary or linebacker where they can make more plays, they can prevent scoring opportunities, and I think that's why you maybe bring in safety. I don't know what they'll do with Jalen. Maybe they'll put him at safety, but I know historically he was a cornerback in college and in the USFL. So yeah, it depends where they put him. They want him to be the shutdown guy or be that roaming safety. If he's not the roaming safety, I think it's very intelligent that any ELF team would want roaming safety back there who can stop big scoring plays and big time scoring opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we saw Raiders games last year. A lot of what I remember was like 35-42, like a lot of really high scoring games from them last season. A lot of offensive shootouts. So definitely could see them bringing in another defensive back. Another guy that's been speculated to join the Raiders in maybe a homecoming is the former International Pathway Player Program and 3-year member of the New York Giants practice squad, Sandro Platzgummer, a Raiders legend before he made the jump to the NFL. His time in the NFL seems to be over at this point. He's done his 3 years of the NFL IPP program. There's been rumors that he might jump to the Canadian Football League. He's talked about maybe joining XFL or USFL team. Do you see him coming back to the ELF?
I don't know. I know, obviously, it's been pretty, everyone knows about his studies, right? I mean, he's got a girlfriend in Austria. He studies medicine, I believe it is, in Austria too. And so that kind of shows the kind of life that he wants after football. And I guess it's how keen is he to start that life, right? And with his brother playing for Swarco as well, it could be a possibility. I think it will happen sooner or later. I don't know when it will happen, right? I think he's going to come back to Austria and he's going to play for Swarco. He wants to play with his brother. So I guess you kind of have to look at how much longer his brother got left, right? If his brother's in his prime and he's still playing, then maybe he'll wait a couple of years. But yeah, if this is last year, then I'm sure he'll want to play with his brother for last year. But something that will I don't know, be the biggest impact will be basically he's just playing the NFL, right? He's used to running against X type of player. He's used to running against. Do you know what I mean? It's like when you come back from that to ELF, you can explode, right? Where if you go to the CFL first, it's kind of like a step down, and so his play might not be as good, right? But coming from the NFL straight to Elf, I think he'll just,
Mm.
I think he's going to explode and just, he's going to do a Glenn Tonga from last year, I think, if he comes back. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, I'm sure there's CFL teams talking to him that want to fill their global quota, and I imagine he'll be one of the top like globals, looked at, right? I know talking to some people in the CFL, they were kind of waiting for his time to run out in the NFL so they could pluck him. I don't know if that sentiment is
But
still,
you have to think,
true to this
I
day.
mean, was he picked up in the draft?
I believe he wasn't. I don't think
Yeah,
anyone has his
exactly. Well,
rights
that
in the
maybe
CFL.
shows you that maybe they're not as interested in him as you think, right? I mean, why? But I would be if I was a CFL team. I'd be interested in him. Like, from everyone saw that run that he did that went viral, right? That he ran 40 yards down the sideline.
Hmm.
He made a couple of those runs. Like he's an explosive player. For me, he'd be an extremely interesting prospect if I was in the CFL, if I was CFL GM. But yeah, if no one picks him up in the global draft, considering some of the other people that they tried to secure their rights for, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure if anyone's going to pick him up.
Yeah, I would be surprised to see him in the ELF this year. I think the only way he does that is if he's kind of just over chasing this pro football
Mm.
dream, right? And he wants to play with his brother and work on his studies, and fair enough, right? Like we all make choices, you know. Um, but he played well when the snaps he had, in at least from the outside in his preseason snaps. So maybe he's still chomping at the bit. Hey, I had my chance. I did well. I put out good film. Somebody give me a chance to play at a high level. If he feels that way, then he probably ends up in the CFL, in my opinion.
I can see it.
Yeah, well, time will tell. We hope Sandro comes to the ELF personally, but wish him the best. Anyway, we'll predict. We'll get into the predictions now. No Sandro. Maybe we'll have to change a few signs. But yeah, let's dive into the season. Daniel, let's start off with a banger. Week 1, the Raiders visit the newly formed Munich Ravens. Who you got getting that
I
win?
think Munich Ravens. I know we're very divided on this. You're a big fan of Munich once on the off season. I am not. I think they still have half a roster. So yeah, I think Spark could get the win opening week against Sean Shelton's new team, his old team.
Yes, this has been named the Sean Shelton Bowl, so it'll be a good way to kick off this season. Week 2, the Raiders visit the transfer of ownership with the Helvetic Guards. I got the Raiders getting that win. So much experience versus another new team. So I think the Raiders start off 2-0 there. Week 3, they host the Barcelona Dragons.
Barcelona Dragons have lost too many players. They've lost Carl Sweet, Zach Edwards, arguably the two best players in Elf. A few other domestic guys as well. I think Smart can take this week.
I agree. Week 4, now it's getting interesting. Raiders at Surge. Two teams that will be definitely looking for the playoffs. Boy, this is kind of a toss-up here. I'm going to give it to the Surge just because they're at home in this one. Totally loaded team. Yeah, you're making a face, but I'm buying into the new era of Raiders football. So I think it's going to be close. The Surge still have a lot of work to do. You can't just throw up a pickup team of guys. They got to mesh and coach each other and everything. So Surge get a close win week 4. Okay, well, yeah, I see you holding your tongue there. We'll move on to week 5. Ciao to the Milano Seamen as they visit the Raiders. Innsbruck. Check out our episode, State of the Franchise, Milano Seamen last week. Seamen versus
I
Raiders.
think this will be a really good game. I think Italy have got a very stable foundation, as does Suaco. I think that Luke Zaraka can offer more on the field, though. Despite not having as good receivers, I feel like he can offer more as a quarterback. And I feel like Milano just about to take this win, but I think it's going to be a close game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is definitely a good matchup. Just like week 6, as the Vikings come to town in, I don't know if we've mentioned this, one of the most beautiful stadiums in Europe, and the Raiders have. They will be hosting the Vikings in one of the best rivalries in Europe. Going to give this one to the Vikings. They're the defending champs. They're absolutely loaded. They get their core back plus a sprinkle of extra talent. So I think the Vikings beat them at home there in week 6. Week 7, little bit of a bounce back game as they go to
Yeah,
Barcelona.
Barcelona have lost too many players. Wait, have we done Barcelona already? Or was this...
Yeah, this is their second matchup against
Okay,
Barcelona
cool.
this season
Yes,
already.
as I said before, Barcelona have lost quite a few players, and I think that they're going to struggle against Swaco. Swaco got a great foundation, and I just don't think they have the firepower to match with Christian Strong. Even if he throws a few picks, I think he still is going to throw a bunch of touchdowns, and I think that takes some of the edge with Barcelona.
Yeah, I got them getting that win for sure. Not feeling the Dragons this year too much. Next, they host the Munich Ravens. I got them getting this win as well. Ravens in the return of Sean Shelton. Who knows? Maybe Munich Ravens need Sean Shelton to suit up at this point. I think it would be an interesting storyline. You never know. It's still like, semi-pro football. Stuff happens at every level. Will be an interesting game, but I got the Raiders sweeping the Ravens, getting the second win against them week 8. Then they have 2 weeks off, and then they host the Helvetic
Yeah,
Guards.
you mentioned this before. Helvetic Guards they've just been very quiet this off season. I don't know if the Swiss talent can keep up the rest of Europe, or like the big names in Europe anyway, like Germany, Austria, and Italy, and so on. And yeah, so I think that so I can take this.
Yeah, I got them. I got them winning that game as well. Week 12, they go to Vienna. I think they lose this one as well. They looked a step behind the Vikings last year, so it's really hard for me to give them a win in this matchup. The Vikings, I think, really loaded up to be a dominant team in the ELF. I think as they made that jump from AFL to ELF, they invested more in imports, and you see just how much better they got, really. So I think the Vikings sweep their rivals this year. So giving Innsbruck another loss. Week 13, another big game for the Raiders. Maybe a must-win at this point in the season with the penultimate matchup. Hosting the Surge. Who
I
you got
think,
in this
yeah,
one?
this is where we differ. I think Surge absolutely obliterate Swaco. I think Surge are just such a good team this year. Amazing coaching. I mean, on paper, they're the best team in the league, I think, in terms of the moves they've made and so on. Whether that happens, obviously, another question. Bringing it together, as you said, is a challenge. But I do think that, they get one over on Swaco big time.
Okay. So that puts them at 4 losses. That'd be 7-4 going into the last week of the season. So playoffs could be on the line depending on how things shake up throughout the season at Milano at 7 p.m. Central Time, Central European Time. So under the lights, win and you're in. I think we talked about this matchup last week on the Milano podcast. This feels like NFC East Week 17 football to make the wild card. I love it, and I'm gonna have to give it to Seaman because they're at home. It's a toss up. You go with the home team. It's my theory. So maybe the Raiders are watching the playoffs from home like the rest of us.
Agreed.
Great insight, Daniel.
No. I think those night games. I mean, I was watching the IFL this last weekend, and these guys finished playing football at like midnight. It's crazy. So yeah, they thrive in the night. It's something that Swaco, I don't think they'll be used to. So yeah, I think Milano take it. I think it's their first season in Elf as well. They want to prove that they belong. I think they have a bit more to them this year than Swaco do.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for listening to the State of the Franchise Raiders Tirol episode. If you made it to this point in the video, thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe and stay tuned for our next State of the Franchise series.